Hi, Sigi.
Hi, Max.
How are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Hey, did you wonder in this week's parasha, why is it that Joseph and Jacob don't see each other over the 17 years that Jacob and his family lived in Goshen? Like, last week we see that Jacob and his whole family come to Egypt.
So they could survive the famine.
That's right. They had to leave. They had to leave Canaan and
come into Egypt.
That's right. And then, how old was Jacob? 130 years old. When does he pass away? In this week's parasha, at 147. So they lived there for 17 years. And on top of it, Joseph actually settled them in Egypt. He gave them ownership to the land that they lived.
Right.
Very different from sojourning. I mean, if you guys want, you can look and see the difference between sojourning and settling. There's a big, big difference because when we got Eretz Israel, we actually settled in the land.
Inhabited, and we got that inheritance of the land.
That's right. But so here's the answer. The reason why Joseph didn't see him, other than the time when he came, and then at the very, very end of the 17 years, just before he passes away, and he brings his two sons to get a blessing, and all the other brothers also go to see their father just before he passes away. The main reason was because, according to Orach Chaim, that Joseph did not want Yaakov he didn't want to be alone with him, for Yaakov to say, hey, my son, Yosef, what happened to you 22 years ago? Where he would have to actually divulge and say, Dad, my brothers, when you sent me to Shem, they ripped off my coat, they threw me into the pit, and they sold me.
That would have been very painful to relive.
Right?
And to say negative things about his brothers. And the father would be upset with all the brothers.
That's right. Now look,
I didn't know they didn't see each other for those 17 years.
Yeah, right? Incredible, eh?
Well,
now look, what happens at this now, 17 years later, what happens? Yaakov asks him, and this is another point, which is quite incredible. Yaakov asks Joseph that he wants to be buried in Canaan. Right. With his ancestors.
In Ma'arat HaMachpelah.
Exactly.
That's the ancestor burial
and
place.
What does Joseph say? Of course, Dad. Yes. And what happens right after? If you read the pasuk, he says, "Swear it to me. Right. Swear to me."
That's major.
Yes.
The question is, we didn't trust him. He needed him to swear. That's odd.
Is that strange?
Yes, of course.
So why? Can it be that Yaakov didn't really know if Joseph was part of the family, if he was loyal to the family, loyal to him? Because remember, I brought up last week when we were talking about it that he had a father, which is
for the first
Yaakov,
17 years of his life.
And then all of a sudden the Pharaoh became that
surrogate
father
in Mitzrayim. That's right.
So whose loyalty Jacob didn't know? Was he loyal to the Pharaoh, or was he loyal to him and his family? And
Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov.
And we have to understand that Yaakov, although he lived beautifully for 17 years in Egypt,
right.
There is commentaries, the sages say, the Chachamim say, that it was a huge disappointment for Yaakov. Huge disappointment. Why? Because imagine, when he went to Canaan, he settled in there. When he left the house of Lavan, his father, he settled in Canaan.
To come back.
And then because of the famine, he had to leave. And he had to uproot his whole family. And his mission, and remember we spoke a few weeks ago about everyone has a purpose in life. Everyone has a mission in life.
That's right.
And Yaakov's mission was to make sure that the Israelites,
the descendants, yes, of Abraham,
that
Yitzchak, and
we
Yaakov,
would end up living in Israel, in the land of Israel. And yet he was uprooted from there.
So he was worried if he was going to be able to continue the descendants coming from him.
So
to stay
it must have been a huge disappointment for him to have uprooted himself and gone into Exodus. Or gone into the exile. Sorry,
Right.
not exile.
Right, absolutely.
Okay? So his way of securing it
was to make sure that Yosef swears that he will bury him with his father and his grandfather, Avraham and Yitzchak, in Ma'arat HaMachpelah.
and then
And that would force the children to come down and go into Eretz Yisrael.
Exodus. That's right.
Okay, so that's brilliant.
Crazy, huh?
Absolutely brilliant.
So what does that mean? Do we...
Oh, what is the lesson for us?
Yeah, so does that mean
We
that...
have to remember that we're sojourning here.
That's right. We're in exile.
This is
doesn't
not
matter.
our home.
Doesn't matter if we're in Montreal, in Toronto, in
Miami.
Miami, in New York. It doesn't matter where
That's
we are.
right.
As Jews, we have to always remember that our real home, our real settlement, has to be in the
Eretz
land
Yisrael.
of Israel.
May it be speedily in our days.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.